Hello and welcome on into the BNB Show. My name is Brandon, and of course, this guy right over here is Brendan in the house of Seahawks, Brendan Nelson, as we are about ready to do here our preview show of this upcoming matchup against the Commanders, which is maybe a little bit of a tougher matchup than it might look on the surface of this, Brendan, with the recent trades that Washington has made. But we're going to turn this one over a little bit. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for asking. Just ready to play a game that is not the game we played last week.
Yeah, this is certainly one of those weeks where the next game can't come fast enough to just sort of hopefully kick that other one out into the background and get it pushed away a little bit. As we do tend to do with these type of shows, Brendan, let's break down a little bit through this as far as the injury situation right now with the team, where are we currently at with our guys, and trying to bring back some guys back into the ranks.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good to me. So the injury report looked pretty good earlier today. Yesterday, there was some definite concern. Today, there was, I would say, a good amount of less concern. So the good news is K9, full practice today, looks ready to go. JSN, full practice, looked ready to go.
That's good news.
Pocket, full practice, looks ready to go. Jaron Reed, who had a tooth injury, which I know a little something about right now.
Yeah.
He looked ready to go.
Hopefully not an extraction.
Yeah. Trey Brown, full practice. Derek Hall, full practice. So there was a lot of good stuff today. No Abe Lucas yet, for anybody wondering about that. Looks like it's going to be next week. The concerns that I have right now are basically Jordan Brooks, who's missed practice 2 days in a row now. And we know he got hurt in that Baltimore game, even though he came back. He did get hurt, so there could be something going on there. And then you have Anthony Bradford, who went backwards today. He was limited yesterday, didn't participate at all today. Usually when you see that, that means something went wrong or they found something. Yeah. So I look at that and I go, I don't think we're going to. Now, he's a backup as of right now, but he's a very important backup to have because Haynes gets hurt a lot. So
same with Lewis. Even if you have Haynes healthy, Lewis could and then you have to kick Haynes over to left side on that.
But other than that, we are looking pretty good. I would say DJ Dallas even came back to practice today. Colby Parkinson came back. So it's better than it was yesterday by a long shot.
Yeah. No, that's good and encouraging. And McIntosh, is he going to make his first action this week?
Well, he's been healthy for a while now. The question is, do we feel like we need him? And that's probably going to depend on what's going on with DJ.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also maybe how much they're pushed a little bit to want to try to get him out on the football field. So an expansive list, Brendan, but one of mainly people returning back in, even if they are going to be a little bit maybe with a bum wing out there on some of these guys, trying to get out a little bit of their performance and where they're at from a health standpoint. But this is where teams tend to be midway through the year. Everybody's a bit beat up and trying to toughen it out a little bit as they can. Lucas did look like it was encouraging with him coming back future. We're not, we can win this game, I think, without him, but it's those games down the line that we're really going to need his services. No doubt about it for those football games. Let's jump right into this matchup. Let's, get on into it. I'd love to hear first off, and I did a behind enemy lines with a Washington Commanders content creator that does, their stuff and look in the team. And they didn't think it was much of a signal, the moving of Montez Sweat and Chase Young, that these were more kind of calculated moves they were making in the moment. Do you buy into that, or do you think that this was a sign with this team that they're looking to move on from Rivera, that this is maybe not full on tank mode, but this is certainly, we're looking with eyes to the future?
I mean, it has to be, right? I kind of feel like it has to be. Those two players, especially, even if you don't believe in Chase Young, which I would kind of get because he's a one-dimensional player. There's some real concerning signs with him that he's just playing hard so he can get paid. Montez Sweat has been really good basically his whole career. He's been a very productive player. And then they trade them for future assets, not players. They're trading them for picks. So I look at that and I go, yeah, that has to be some kind of a move to make the current team worse so you make next year's team better. So, yeah, I look at that and I go, there's obviously still some talent on this Washington team, but I'm looking at their edges right now. They're starting edges right now on my other screen here. And I barely know who these guys are. So you can't tell me things haven't gotten a little bit worse.
Yeah, I wasn't quite buying what he was selling on that as well. I was going, yeah, I don't know if this is that looks in a way to me that's I think a little bit more in that realm of it. You started off with the defense with them. Let's start off with that. That's the concern right now for us offensively with our woes recently. I know the defense didn't play a good game last week, but the offense has been consistently struggling to find its footing the past couple of weeks, and they come up into this matchup now with a bit of that weakened edge group. But this is still, to me, Brendan, and looking at it, a defense that provides a lot of challenges across the line, absent maybe the edges. Do you see it the same way?
I see some talent, but they've been awful so far this year on defense. They have one of the worst defenses in the league. It's bottom 3 in scoring, bottom 5 in yards. They're not really doing a good job forcing turnovers. They've been passed all over. So I see the talent, but I don't see it coming together very well right now. Like, just as an example, they still have 2 really good guys on that defensive front in Jonathan Allen and Darren Payne, 2 blue chip guys, 2 former first round picks, and they're not really getting that level of play out of those 2 guys right now. I don't think they're just getting kind of okay play out of those 2 guys. I like what they got at corner. Benjamin, I remember scouting St. Just when he came out of, I think it was Minnesota.
That's right.
He was a guy I was very interested in, and he's been pretty good.
Mhm.
But, in service of what? What is it for? Now, they have made the decision, although it wasn't really much of a decision, to not play Cody Barton anymore. And I think that helped a lot because he was, in particular, a really, really bad part of that defense. I was looking at some of the advanced numbers on him. It was bad.
Mhm.
But I still look at this defense and I go, there's going to be some stuff you can do here, especially with one thing that's been kind of a trend for these Commanders. Number 1 wide receivers have been beating them up. They had that game where they gave up like 80 touchdowns to DJ Moore when they played the Bears. They gave up a ton to AJ Brown twice this year. When they played the Bills, Diggs went all over them. Like they've had an issue with that. So I'm looking at something like that and going, okay, that should be something we can do in this game as well. So I don't know. I look at this Commanders defense and I see talent, but it's not coming together.
Yeah, it's definitely got some individual sparks of life, but that's certainly my outlook a little bit on it too. I think that this is a game, Brendan, that certainly is going to challenge a little bit of the nature of the offense recently, does it not? In that you've been predisposed to running in the A and the B gaps, and though, like you say, Allen and Payne are basically giving you kind of a little bit better than average seasons, and neither of those guys are being paid to just merely give you that. But this is a game with their edges where they're at, and still with the strength inside as it is, where I think you would be led as an offense to believe that if we're going to attack in the ground game, if we're going to try to find a week to utilize the fly sweep action, this might be the good week to do that, not only for the reasons of those edges, but also because whoever's taken over there at middle linebacker for Barton was not the planned guy to take it over in this offseason. So even though they might be playing a little bit better than Barton, or at least holding things together, still a place where you can challenge them, especially the gap integrity, and to keep their eyes in the right spot when you got guys moving around with pre-snap motion there. Are you buying that and what I'm selling on that?
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, you got to do what you can to take the offensive line out of the equation here a little bit because it's just not playing well right now. And a lot of the things that I've read this week are talking about how the offensive game plan seems to be one right now with these Seahawks trying to get the offensive line as uninvolved as possible because if you put the game on them, they're going to mess it up. That's why you're seeing things like us passing the ball so much because we don't think we have the offensive line to run the ball. We're trying to avoid third down completely is the basic idea there. And I think if you run to the outside, you can kind of make it less about the offensive line doing their job and put it more on the running back to make the right play. Put it more on your wide receivers. You have great run blocking wide receivers on this team.
Yeah.
Maybe the best run blocking receivers in football. Like Bobo and DK alone is more than what most teams can bring to bear.
It's true. I like this approach, and I like that the tactic there to really utilize that part, lean into that part that is a strength, Brendan, versus what has not been a strength. But the issue here, of course, becomes commitment. And the Hawks, up until this point this year so far, have not remained committed on outside zone runs, pitch plays, or fly sweeps. just not been a common element to this offense so far. This is the week, though, to me, to start to unwrap that. They've not necessarily gotten the year I think that they thought they were going to get initially. This was a kind of a controversial pick for them, Brendan, when they went in the first round with the third cornerback taken in the first round, which would be Emmanuel Forbes. My man that
he's the guy who's like 140 something.
Yeah. He was the silver light. Is this going to be the biggest differentiation of weight between a receiver going up against a cornerback that we've seen in quite a bit of time when DK matches up on?
I would assume they wouldn't do that, right? Like they can put St. Juste on DK. St. Juste has size. He can match up pretty well. They've got Fuller, who's actually playing really well so far this year, Kendall Fuller. So they don't need to do that. That would be pretty mean, right? That would be a pretty mean welcome to the NFL moment.
I just want to see him just try to press DK ones with those long, skinny toothpick arms and see what happens. Give me one snap with it. But DK is going to have easily a good 60 pounds on him, maybe 50 pounds on him if he does go mono and probably faster than him on top of it, which is a scary proposition for Forbes. But if you can get that mismatch, you see that if you're Geno, Brendan, and they don't have a single safety high help over the top, this is a little bit of why you've had number one receivers flourishing up against this defense up until this point, is that maybe those situations do open up for you to go take advantage. I will say too that they get a little bit stronger as well. Their second round pick, Jartavius Q, as he's called, out of Illinois, has come back last week. He's a second round pick for them, a safety position. He got an interception against the Patriots last week in his return. So he does make that secondary a little bit better from where they were. I'm not saying the defense is anything less than what you painted the picture and the portrait of. But I do think that he makes it tougher. And because you do have Benjamin St. Juste and you do have Kendall Fuller, who are playing a pretty good year in that secondary, now with him rounding in, maybe they can lean a little bit more on the strength of that secondary at this point. Not saying it's been a strength, but just that it looks better with his presence back there. Certainly looked better last week, albeit they were taking on New England on the road, which a lot of people are going to look right against them, right? So that's not exactly measuring stick. And boy, that Illinois defense, Brendan, with this kid looks like a player. Witherspoon's been a player. I still think Sydney, what was it, Brown out there as well. Those three guys that came off that defense, they all look like they're kind of legitimate to me, coming on the heels of that draft.
Yeah, and they got a Jamin Davis, the linebacker they took in the first round as well. They've done a really good job of investing all of their high caliber picks into defensive blue chippers, I feel like. And I mean, Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but Jonathan Allen, Darren Payne, Jamin Davis, a lot of they've been spending big time on this defense. And it's kind of weird to see it not pay off when they have supposedly a good defensive coach.
Why hasn't it paid off? Because they took the Niners approach. Basically, they don't run the wide nine, but they are a front 4-3 unit with Rivera there. They want their front four guys to get after it. They had a plan in place, obviously some copying there, but he was bringing this over from Carolina because that was Carolina, his mode there too. But what would, where do you stand with it? I've got a reason why I think, but I would like to know where your reasoning would be with it too.
Oh man, that's tough. That's an interesting question. Like honestly, at no point over the last several years did I feel like their front was as good as it should have been, given the investments in it. I'll say that, but it was still good. So I don't really think it was like the players. I don't think these are a bunch of busts. Like maybe Chase Young is a bust, but that's because he got hurt more than anything. So I don't know what the reason is, but I love the way they approached building this defense. It just never worked. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think that's a fair point. I definitely think at the very least it's part of it, if not more so than that, that you didn't get quite maybe the elite nature that you thought you were going to get. I think the tackles have been what they thought they were going to be. I think in Sweat's been solid, but not great. And with Young, they thought he would be a centerpiece on that line. And instead, like you said, he more just kind of a pass rusher more than that, along with the injuries. I think you could make an argument with Ron Rivera throughout his career, Brendan, see if you buy this, that he's had as bad a hard luck in the quarterbacks he's been given as just about any modern NFL coach that's run out there and has had many different years of being out there as a head coach. Yeah, he got the Cam Newton MVP season, but he had to run a highly modulated offense in order to make that occur. Outside of that, who's been the quarterbacks he's had in his career to work with? and he's going to probably get fired this offseason in Washington. And he's one of those guys. The Cleveland coach was another one of these guys we talked about this year. I feel like this, Brendan, that our guys not necessarily being given the most cleanest fair shake, because as a coach, if you don't have a functional quarterback position, no matter what you're doing with your level of expertise to your side of the ball, you're going to get held back. You're going to be restrained. And it's not like they've been bad purely even this year. I mean, they've got 3-4 wins on the year. It's not like Rivera's been just purely bad. It's just that he's never had his quarterback, Taylor Heineke, and now Sam Howell we'll talk about in a second. And that's my main thing, I think, that sits at the forefront of why it hasn't worked there.
Yeah, I guess that's got to be part of it. But I think this defense is bad, even independent of the offense, though. Like there's something else going on here. Obviously, Ron Rivera is the kind of coach who is going to place heavy value on off-ball linebackers because, I mean, we saw this with Kuechly. That's who he built his defense around in Carolina. Maybe that just doesn't work that well in the modern NFL. You can't build your defense from the inside linebackers out. Mm-hmm. That's got to be there. There's so much other stuff on defense these days that is more important. Cornerbacks, pass rushers, defensive line in general. Maybe his approach is just a little out of date in that way.
I think it's a good, fair point, because he's also a guy that's not a big, much like we've seen with Carroll in his defenses, he doesn't want to blitz. And so it does come down to sort of dropping into zones and trying to make it happen that way. He's not a real pressure-based guy. He just wants that front four to wreak havoc. To your point on the linebackers, you can make an argument he needs a Kuechly type guy. It's this next level processor at the position to be that step ahead, to allow things to still remain simplistic, because they individually can do complicated things other players can't do. But I do think he's going to probably be let go at the end of this year. And, I don't know if he's gotten necessarily the greatest of fair shake, especially if they're going to go get like a guy like Caleb now, Brendan.
It's too late they've won too many games for Caleb.
Yeah,
they're going to have to.
That's true.
I mean, I did say right before the season started, that feels like a Commander's move to trade 4 first-round picks to get the Caleb pick. And I think that could still happen. I guess it depends how much their front office likes Quinn Ewers and likes Penix, because those are the guys they'll probably be able to get at their native pick.
It's true. And they are starting to take with these 2 picks in Young and Montez Sweat. They've got some ammunition now to package together if they want to start putting, like you talk about, the package it might take to go up and get them. Though I still wonder what team's going to give up on the opportunity to draft Williams at this point, as you look at the potential teams that are circling that particular fish, the Sharks.
Well, it would have to be a team that Caleb would refuse to play for, right? It would have to be like the Cardinals, and he says, I'm not playing for the Cardinals, and then they trade him. It would be like that.
Yeah. No, I guess I could see the pathway with that. And maybe they're setting the stage for something like that potentially. It's a great point. It would make sense. But I'd feel bad for Ron if he left and didn't get it. Just 1 year of good quarterback play. Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell. It's Carolina didn't have anything there once, Cam Newton moved on. It was brutal. Brutal, Brendan. Yeah. So utilization of the outside zone run. This defense drops a lot into zones. Probably going to be a requirement of even though I know you said that the number 1 receivers have the success they do you try to force feed DK, or is it more about trying to pick apart the short zones and just, back foot Geno, hit it, let it rip, be concise in your decision-making, not a lot of holding onto the ball or trying to extend plays? What is the pathway in this game for success against this defense and throwing the ball?
Well, I don't think you need to force anything. I mean, that's just a general rule. You don't need to force anything. Mm-hmm. Like if you're forcing it, you're probably doing something wrong. But I was looking at EPA stats earlier today for a video I made about Geno. He has been phenomenal against zone defense, and he's actually been terrible against man. It's a very, very stark contrast. So if you're telling me that Washington does a lot of zone, that tells me that's something we should be able to exploit. So bottom line is, I am looking for a very big game from this offense. This should be the kind of game where you got embarrassed last week, so you've got that going on. Then you've got this matchup against this defense that has been partially gutted. They've lost 2 of their better players. And you've got that matchup you just talked about where they run a lot of zone. And you've got, I mean, if we know about it, the team must know about it. This blueprint stuff where even Locked On Seahawks had a graphic they posted on their Twitter account, which was like EPA per play when lined up with 3 receivers is this, lined up with 2 tight ends is this. We're seeing all these things that make it very clear what this Seahawks team is good at and what this Seahawks team is not good at right now.
Mhm.
So more than even trying to do anything to take advantage of this defense specifically, I want to see a return to the 2 tight end sets, and I want to see a lot of play action. Because another thing that I saw, Geno Smith is the 2nd best quarterback in the league on play action in terms of EPA. 2nd. Better than Mahomes, better than Burrow, better than Herbert, better than Tua, better than everyone except for Brock Purdy. So
probably runs the least amount of those quarterbacks too. If you look at pure number of attempts off of play action of all those guys you mentioned, I'd reckon to guess he has the least
he's
amount.
way closer to the bottom than the top. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Which is another confounding part on this off. Why? Again, why? The coaches have this data, Brendan, and so I agree with you on what you're saying. But the question comes back into my mind: if they're seeing this as we are so clearly, it's hard to deny it. Is it that you just hope that the 3 wide receivers eventually develop, like this thing will eventually return the fruits later on in the year?
Yeah, so I'm just looking for a return to sanity here more than anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just like, do some things that make sense. They shouldn't be that hard. So yeah, if they're going to play a lot of zone defense against our offense, then I'm feeling very good about things.
Yeah, especially with those numbers and 12 personnel, utilization of running to the edges, maybe a little bit of fly sweep with Eskridge back in the flow. We've given him 1 fly sweep so far here since he's returned. So maybe trying to find a little bit more of testing of that. If we're going to have him on the roster, let's maybe try to find a way to use him just a bit. I know it's hard because everybody's trying to find their touches and balls in different places. But I think that's a great, just generalized way for us to approach into this game. How do we get DK Metcalf's on pace here, Brennan, for 100 touches, 100 targets this year. You look at kind of the other guys out there in this league that are in kind of where you would think his place would be. Not saying he's Tyreek Hill or anything, but Tyreek Hill is going to have probably 200. Is probably going to have well over 200 targets this year. So how do we find a way in this offense to get him some more not manufactured, but just a way to better utilize DK Metcalf, like, not having to spend the whole first 2 quarters of a game without getting him a single target, for instance?
Well, recently I look at some of these plays on 3rd down where it's like every receiver is running a go route and then JSN's running a screen. Like there's nothing in the middle. There's no intermediate option. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I'm kind of hung up on right now, because intermediate option should be what the McVay offense is all about, right?
I would think that's what it's supposed to be about, and moving the chains. It's a key part of it. You use everything in the offense. You're going to go short, intermediate, long, but you're using everything. It's not to be leaning to 2 different areas, one or the other.
So that would be my first thought. Just like I remember in overtime. Do you remember the 3rd and 6 with DK, where we hit DK for a first down on 3rd and 6? Just simple intermediate route. It was like kind of a slant. He, not a pure slant, but a slant over the middle.
Yeah.
And, just simple stuff like that. I don't know why we've gotten away from that. It's like the game plan lately. It makes me think of that. Remember the 3rd down against the Rams where everybody ran a go route? Mm-hmm. Everybody was just doing a 9 route, and Geno ended up throwing it out of bounds.
On 3rd and 3, right?
It was 3rd and 3. It's like, and now it seems like there's more of that going on here. And it's like, it's like a Madden offense in some regards. It's really bizarre. I think Madden offenses know you want your guys to run to the intermediate zones too. You don't want to completely take away that whole facet of your offense.
It is a part that they don't utilize. There's some brutal all 22 shots, Brendan, of that space you talk about in the middle of the field from this last Ravens game where there wasn't any available targets there. And you are kind of sitting there going, what's happening here? A little bit of it as well. I was watching in this tape, the all 22 of the Ravens and just checking on some concepts they were using offensively. I'd like to see us use some more of too, is that flood zone concept where you have kind of 2 guys in the similar near points of a route. But what you're doing is pulling the zone defender to one guy, so the other guy is completely freed up for a wide open catch. And teams do it to us to death. I mean, they do it over and over and over again, and especially on our shorter range coverages with the linebackers and whatnot. Get another spot in the middle of the field that you can maybe utilize by using some of that methodology. A little bit of, run Tyler through, have DK running right behind him. Tyler runs off the coverage. Bam, you go to DK. He sets down in the zone and Tyler runs through the zone. Those kind of concepts. You don't see a lot of that as well. When you're watching the All-22 tape, it's like if you got two guys on the inside, two guys on the outside, you're running a 4 wide, 3 wide, 1 tight end. It's like you'll see stuff like this where the guys will go out here and then these guys will go up and they'll go out here and everybody's in a separate different zone. Everybody's far kind of away from the other a little bit, where they're tracking on their route, which is not as much the modern route concepts that we see brought into play in this era as much. Do you think we're going to be able to make some noise on this defense? Do you think this is a defense with where they are structured as weak they are, or is it the offense is just too hard to predict?
I would certainly think so. Not only because of the matchup, but also because of the fact that this offense played the way they did last week. So, everyone's going to be amped up. Everybody's going to have been focused this week. Everybody's going to be like, oh, can't do that again. We're going Gino's going to do all the little things he needs to do to get right for this game. DK is going to do all the little, it's just human nature to respond to a game like that. And generally speaking, this Seahawks team has responded in the right way coming off embarrassing losses. So,
and Coach Carroll's been one of the best, hasn't he? Coming off.
I'm thinking it's got to be like 30 points at least, I think, or else I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a failure.
Yeah, I love it, Brendan. I love it. It's a bold take off where they were last week, but I think I'm predisposed to be with you because I think that's a real thing with teams having their will and their kind of manhood tested in a game like that and being questioned all through the week to come back and provide a little bit more in that effort. And you're playing it at home. Let's also acknowledge that with you got Washington going to New England. Then I know it's a short plane ride, but you're on the road. Then you got to come back home. Then you got to come back out to Seattle. That can be a little bit of a tough trip, as it is for us going out east, like we saw this last week. Let's flip it over then to the other side of the football here, Brendan, because I don't think there's a lot else to note on this defense. We went through, I think, basically there's not a lot there with it. Like you said, it's a bad defense, so you turn it through.
Do you know anything about the guys they're using to replace Young and Sweat? Because I'm seeing Casey Toohill and I'm seeing James Smith-Williams. I don't know very much about either of those guys.
I don't know much about either of those guys too. I'm also kind of a little bit surprised, Brendan, that they're not going to KJ Henry as one of the main starters here. Maybe he's injured, but I mean, that guy coming out of Clemson to me is going to have more offering than Toohill and Smith-Williams as far as the upside goes. Those two guys haven't played bad ball for Washington, at least according to the PFF stats and where they're sitting when they have been out there. Not that they played great either, but Toohill does have 4 sacks on the year. So, he has given, that's a part-time role, providing him that kind of production. So, he's hung in there a little bit, at least it seems like. But they're weak there. I mean, that's it. KJ Henry's the only other guy that really stands out to me of guys that we've tracked. Fadarius Mathis, remember that was a guy that we both did not like at the end of the deal.
Oh yeah. I feel like I thought he would play inside in the NFL. I didn't think he was an edge.
He is inside. He's not an edge.
Okay.
But he's their worst. Okay. He's their worst rated player on their defense right now. So he's even below Cody Barton, if you can believe that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So it's going to be they're going to be driven by the interior defensive tackles, by a secondary that their hope is improved, especially with Q out there. But we should still be able to take advantage of a lot of different places on this defense because it's weak for a reason. And it was weak when they had 2 of their better players off the field. And say what you will about Young being a one-trick pony, he's done that one trick pretty well this year when he was there for them.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we know what we do need to do offensively. Nothing. I think we're pretty many fans, especially on that 2 tight end note, Brendan, are going to be in full agreement with you on that. Let's get a little quick catch up on the donos here. Casro, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I'm still not too worried about Gino, but if he can't succeed against the Commanders, I don't know how long we can defend him. Well, I'm fighting the war right now, Brennan. I felt like a guy that's like on an island that just is losing plots of the island constantly. There's little oceans taking a scrape every time it's coming in with the waves. And I find myself being maybe the only guy that'll be on this island going, I'm the only Gino backer. This is it. And the sand's just, leaving beneath my feet because I can feel an ever turn within the fan base on him. I still find myself having his back, but I do feel like Cosra that there's a general feeling in the fan base about that there's a bit of a short leash here with Gino, or that there should be, or that he needs to shoulder that burden. I've tried to argue up and down why I think there's some other factors here that go beyond just Geno and him, how he's playing, but I don't know if it's always landing. And I think people definitely have a very strong opinion on this one with him, that he needs to step forward and do better and do more.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, he has to defend himself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we can say all this stuff, but at a certain point, he's got to defend himself. And this Commanders defense has mostly been awful. This is a defense that got destroyed by Justin Fields about a month plus ago. This is a defense that gave up 33 points to the Denver Broncos. This is a defense that they've given up an average of 36 points across 2 games to the Eagles. Like, this is a very bad defense. I'm not really tripping that hard about him struggling against a team like the Ravens because their defense is that good, or even the Browns, where I don't even really think he struggled that much. He just had a game where he did some good things, some bad things. But these are very good defenses that he's playing against.
Could you even say it against the Bengals too?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think the thing with the Bengals game was that he played really, really well until he got to the red zone. And then he was really bad in the red zone.
Yeah.
Like that to me is very different than what he did against like the Ravens, where he did nothing good ever.
Yeah. That's fair.
I agree. Yeah. But again, I take a look at these numbers and it's very clear to me that it would be a lot easier to just change the things you're doing on offense a little bit rather than put a new quarterback in and then try to figure out what you can do with him. That should be much simpler, right? Like, that's the case for anything on this team. It's easier for the guy that you have to figure it out than for you to go get a new guy. Getting a new guy is a pain in the butt.
Agreed. The best conclusion for us is Geno to find his footing. And like you say, I can get to a whole lot easier of that point. A lot of the segment of some of the Seahawks fans out there that feel this way, I can get a whole lot faster to that realm of saying, okay, let's go to a Drew Lock. If we can have ticked off the boxes of trying out and leaning into the 2 tight end sets, or utilizing better the outside run, or just running the ball more consistently, or finding a little more consistency in your pass protection. If these things could be removed, for me, it's easier then to get to the assessment point of throwing the shade at Geno and going, well, no, he's not getting this done. This stuff is working, but all that stuff is not working across the line or being utilized. And I think that is the big inhibiting factor still from my point on it. But it's also something that, Brendan, we just continue to track throughout the year with Geno. And like you say, it's eventually you got to show something here. You can't just be all about the excuses onto him on it, though they are valid. And I think that they're reasonable. You go up against Washington this week. I don't think people are going to hear those kind of excuses of, well, you're under an onslaught. We can run, like, come on, it's Washington. Like I said, Justin Fields could carve this defense. You should be able to do it too, especially playing at home.
Right.
It's not crazy to say it. I get it. Thank you for that donation, Kasra. And thank you for I Make Big Plays for the $5 donation. It says, after getting punched, I think the boys come back fired up. 31-10 Seahawks. P.S. Love these streams. They make my week. Thanks, guys. Hey, appreciate you. That's very kind of you both for the dono and the kind sentiment, man. It's our pleasure doing what we do. Seems like you're in agreement with Brendan. Brendan got 30 points. We haven't gotten to the point of the show yet where we're predicting, but you're right in alignment with Brendan on the score, it would seem. You buying the defense, keeping this offense down to 10 points?
Well, this offense is pretty frisky. I would say that, again, because of the rubber band nature of an NFL season, you would expect them to have something to say after what happened with the what happened against the Ravens, right? Like, that game went so badly, you would expect them to step up and say, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. But 10 points, I don't know. There's some stuff with this Commanders offense that I think is pretty respectable.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be hard to get down to the 10 points. I do think, like you say, Brendan, the defense will bounce back to play better this week, and we'll get an improved performance, partly because of the challenge aspect you brought up, partly because the level of talent that you're facing on this Washington offense is not nearly as difficult than what you had to match up last week with the Ravens. But thank you, I Make Plays, for the $5 donation, and I love your prediction. I hope you are right. Seattle Big Patty Daddy. Not just Big Patty Daddy anymore. We got Seattle Big Patty Daddy in the house. What's up, Mr. Patty? Thank you for the $5 donation. It says, I'm personally am a huge Geno fan. Have either of you heard of the yips in baseball and golf? I feel like Gino has that right now. Has to commit to his throw. I hadn't thought of that at all. Have you heard of have you ever heard of the yips before?
Oh, absolutely. I remember watching Colton Wong get like 3 errors in one inning earlier this baseball season, and it was very clear that, he's a good fielder. He's good in the field. So something was in his head for a little bit there.
Yeah, there's some pretty famous baseball examples of this. I believe back in like the 80s, you had Steve Sachs. I think Chuck Knobloch went through this a little bit back in the day, where they just suddenly couldn't throw from second base to first base. It was the wildest thing you'd ever see, where they literally were airmailing 5, 7, 10-foot throws completely over the head of guys. This happened to a pitcher, Rick Ankiel, back in the day, who was a pitcher who had to turn himself into an outfielder and became a decent outfielder in the pros because he could no longer place the ball, just lost the ability to do it. It happens. I hadn't really ever considered it here with Gino in this situation, Big Patty, but I think that he is not necessarily as confidently stepping into those throws. It's part of what stood out to me in that 12-game stretch last year where he started out so very hot, in that he was in command, he was trusting his reads, and he was letting it rip. And this year, there is definitely a tangible tentativeness to his game that definitely could very well be ascribed to maybe the yips, where there is pressure on here. And, I got those incentives and I'm not hitting them and I'm not playing well. And am I going to keep my job? And it all starts to just get more stressful and more stressful and more stressful. But the one thing that's clear with the yips, Brendan, is if you get them, there's not a lot you can do about it. It seems like sports psychologists, whatever. I mean, if you got it, it's sunk whole careers in an inability to deal with it. So I hope not, but possible. You buying it? You buying the yips?
I don't know. Like you look at I was looking at some of the all-22 of that Ravens game. I don't really know what he's supposed to do on most of those plays. Like the things that bug me would be all these throws to Metcalf where he just misses. Like he's got Metcalf. He's got it. He's got the play and the ball 2 hops to him. Yeah. That kind of looks like the yips to me, but that only happens when he throws it to Metcalf. Like I don't know what it is. Like against Cleveland, he was pinpoint when targeting Lockett, pinpoint when targeting JSN, targeting Fant. Everything else was fine, but Metcalf, it does look like he has the yips. Everyone else, I think we're okay, but I don't know how to explain that. Like I don't know how to explain that he sees Metcalf open down the field and he just suddenly turns into Coy Detmer, but it's kind of like that, but overall, I don't think so.
Yeah, I would still land on saying it's an interesting thought for sure, Patty, but I think Brendan's thoughts on this do probably capture pretty well where I stand on it as well, is that the only kind of yippy kind of throws that we see are 2 DK. Those are the ones where you go, ooh, what's going on here? The other ones are pretty good and solid. The other thing is the pass rush, like Brendan mentioned as well. When you're under an onslaught, when you're under a consistent onslaught where half your dropbacks you're getting hit in the mouth, and that happens over a couple of game span, or like it's basically been happening since week 13 of last year, that stuff accumulates and adds up, and you do start to get quarterbacks getting into that unfortunate zone of feeling ghosts that might or might not be there, and feeling like their throws are being impacted that might or might not be impacted because they're always feeling the heat that just is there. It seemingly is on every play to them. I think that's more of what it is. But the throws to DK have been weird, Patty. I'll tell you that. I can't blame you for looking for maybe an outside the box on this, because especially when he's open and Gino's got the ability to throw and get the ball off cleanly, and sometimes just grounds it, dirts it, limp dicks it, as one of my subscribers said. Thank you though, Patty. Appreciate you for that $5, man. I love the reference as well. You never want the yips in life, man. When you get that in your head, you can't get out of it, man. You get stuck.
A good one is bowling, when you're swinging through and you hit your knee with the ball.
Oh,
and
that's a thing, huh?
Yeah, because you just got it a little too close to your leg, like when you're swinging through, and then you're trying to do it again after that, and you're intentionally trying to avoid your leg.
Yeah,
like you're going out of your way to make sure it doesn't hit your knee, and then you're just messed up.
That stings like hell then when it hits, right? Mm-hmm. When you do, because that thing's so solidly built, you could just go like that on your knee, but you're coming through with a thing like I could chip a kneecap if you hit that wrong.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, no question, Brandon, I just wanted to donate to you and have taken my heart today. But don't worry, tomorrow I will forget you exist. Thank you, Feed Me. Appreciate that $5 donation. And
Thank you,
very,
Feed Me.
very kind of you, man. Very kind of you, as you always do, donate on both of our channels and show your support in that way. So nothing but love right back to you, brother or sister or whatever on that. Jeffrey Thistle with a $10 donation. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. Says, too many people expecting us to win, making me scared. We played bad teams close historically. I'm going to even feelings out. 12-6 Hawks, barn burner game, 100%. Expecting dumb things to happen. Well, yeah, you may not be wrong, Jeffrey. You may not be wrong. I mean, we do play because I think it's what drives me and Brendan where we think this a little bit more than anything else is that bounce back feeling, that ebb and flow of a season you get where, you cannot try, you can get your pride tested and challenged in a way. And then you come back that next week and it's just extra specially vibrant. Your want and will to show everybody that this isn't the case. This isn't who we are. No, we're better than this. And this feels like one of those kind of weeks where that sort of spirit would take them over. But, and on top of the fact, this Washington team is such a different team than the ones we've been playing. I mean, let's acknowledge in the poor performance of the offense, be it with the Bengals on the road at 10 a.m. or on the Ravens on the road at 10 a.m. or even the previous game, which I'm completely spacing on, which are the Browns. These are tough defenses we're playing and pretty good overall teams at the end of the day. It's not like we're playing this way against necessarily just poor opponents. These guys are actually okay, pretty good. I mean, especially the Bengals, who's had the rough start. They've been every bit as good as we thought they would be once Burrow got that calf back to full health. And
yeah, they're clearly an elite team.
Yeah,
as in the last 4 games they played, clearly.
So I got to look a little bit those couple of games we played, especially in some of this offensive struggles where you go, okay, last week you played against the second best defense in the NFL. The week before that, you played against the number 1 defense in the NFL. I give you the Bengals are not as good defensively necessarily as other teams. That's still probably going to be a top 10 defense minimum. And you're not going to play that every single week. We got to play better offensively. So don't get me wrong there, but I really do feel like, Jeffrey, though, I'm not going to predict the 31-10 or that we're just going to completely boat race them. I think it'll be probably relatively close in the first half. I think you get into the third quarter and we start to separate from them as the team we are at that point. But they're going to make us nervous for at least a half. No doubt about that, brother.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate you for that $10 donation. I like you beaving things out, not making the universe feel like we're getting too overconfident as Hawks fans. That's a solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the NFL, right? It's the NFL. These teams run close to each other. They don't. It's not college. This is every team has NFL caliber talent.
They do indeed. There's no week is given that this is going to get it. You're going to take this down no matter what. These things do tend to be dogfights. Parity is so real in this sport, Brendan, and so readily apparent every single week, not just in our games, but watching the games across the sport on a weekly basis. So it's going to be hard, probably, Jeffrey, but hopefully maybe they make it a little bit comfortable for us at the end after what they made us sit through last week. That would be mighty, mighty nice. Let's break down a little bit more further this offensive matchup here, Brendan. And I want to thank everybody too. You guys are very, very kind for all the donations today. Appreciate you for that. Thank you so very much. You guys are always amazing in that respect of things. We've got a offense to me here in Washington that has made a bit of a change this past offseason, bringing in Eric Bieniemy. Has Eric Bieniemy been good for this Washington football team?
I would say yes. This Washington team is as quarterback deficient as any team in the league going into this season. As of right now, maybe a team like the Jets is a little worse off. You could probably find, I don't know, maybe the Packers honestly look like they have a pretty bad quarterback situation too. But they came, Atlanta, oh boy, yeah. But Washington went into the season and they kind of knew what they had. And he's done some pretty good things with that offense so far. Howell is actually having pretty respectable year so far. It's not great, but he's keeping things afloat. And they have 900 yards of offense combined over their last 2 games. Now, they're not exactly efficient. They're not scoring as much as they should given that production, but we've seen they've been able to actually really rack up some totals here. They put up 35 in Denver. And I know Denver's defense is really bad this year, but I will always respect any team that can go into Denver in September and win and put up 35 points. Like, That's actually really good. They played really well in 2 games against the Eagles,
Yeah,
who, I mean, so far this year, the Eagles defense hasn't even been good. But the point is, putting up 31 points on any team is usually pretty good.
it is. I mean, we've seen it with ours. It's even bad teams can put up a fight where it's not just you just walk your way to 30 points. You got to still earn it out. Something that stands out to me is he's doing a lot of watching the tape with him. It's manufacturing. It's the part that has me really scared about this. Not scared, but worried about this Washington offense and what they can bring with Bieniemy, because Bieniemy is a smart enough coach with Reed through the years, and they have the setups within this offense where it's a lot of bubble and tunnel screens and getting the ball out of Hal's hands after a second and a half. It's essentially those routes that have recently, historically speaking, given our Seahawks defenses a lot of trouble. That we're going to just dink and dunk you all day kind of thing and stay committed to it. The one place to me that I watch and how that stands out to me is he's going to give you a couple throws a game. He's got that Stafforditis in him a bit where it's like, yeah, he can make some money throws out there. But if they start to allow him to stretch and put some throws down the football field and let him try to let it rip, you might have some opportunities in ways that I don't think like PJ Watt or like a Josh Dobbs would give you, or some of the other quarterbacks we played like Dalton this year necessarily would give you as much. He's going to maybe give you a couple more opportunities. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would think so. Howell, I remember trying to evaluate him in the draft a couple years ago. It was a tough evaluation, but
Very hard.
I think it's pretty clear that he is actually kind of a guy who's willing to risk it. He's not like some of these other young quarterbacks that just are content with playing everything soft and easy and just hoping things work out for them at the end of the game. So yeah, I would say that you look at this game, Washington has good receivers. They got some of the better receivers in the league. Dotson does look like he's going to play, by the way. He's healthy now.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got McLaurin, you've got Curtis Samuel, you've got Dotson. So he's got some pretty good things to work with. And they do some kind of interesting things with how they use him. Like I remember last year when they played Howell against Dallas in the last game of the year, they were actually doing some like, it was almost like the QB Eagles play from Tecmo Bowl where they would just roll them out with no intention of throwing it. It was a run play all day.
Yeah.
It looked just like the QB Eagles run from Tecmo Bowl. So like, and this is interesting partially because Sam Howell is slow. He runs like a 5.1 40. He has the same 40 time as like Tavondre Sweat probably, but somehow he actually manages to use those legs okay. So he's a very unique player, I guess, in that regard.
He's kind of got he does it a little bit like Tebow does. He has a weird, strange kind of ability to run with toughness at the position that you don't normally get, rather than being about twitchiness to your point or quickness in his utilization. But he does have good legs, and he is a plus mover of the football. He had a brutal Brennan. I mean, the thing with him, and I look at it, and I have a question for you on this, and the next one that's to do with him. But he had that 1 year in college where he was great. 4 of his guys got drafted at the next level. And then came back the next year, changing coaching staff, changing talent on that team. It's UNC, so it's not like they're stacking 5-star guys up every year. Has a middling year where he's kind of having to carry the team on his back. Falls from being a first-round graded guy prior to the start of the season to falling to the 5th round in a weak quarterback draft.
Yeah.
This guy I talked to this last week, Brendan, seemed to be pretty convinced that this is a guy for them that they can roll with into the future. I remain a little bit reticent to believe that, but are we seeing enough from him this year to say that this Washington team may not be? Yeah, there's a chance they might try to package picks, but very well could end up landing themselves back in the stage of saying, no, we have seen enough from this guy. We think that this guy can be the guy we can roll with into the future.
I think you have to look beyond the simple box score. He's been sacked 44 times in 9 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe his offensive line is bad enough to justify that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is some David Carr levels of quarterback abuse. And I don't believe the offensive line is some awful unit that can't protect him at all. I think that there are some things that he is doing that is leading to that. Like, he is on pace to get sacked about 85 times this year. So I look at that and I go, there's some pocket presence issues. There's some holding onto the ball too long issues. And, he's got a good offensive coordinator this year. He's got good weapons. That kind of stuff should not be happening, but it is. That tells me there's kind of a limiter here.
I think it's a very fair point to be made on this. And that's the spot where, again, we're looking where our defense can take advantage in this game. There you go. Find him on the mistakes, get him on the point where you got like Mafe last week, a strip sack stumble because he's not aware of the guy bearing down on him in the pocket, and make them pay for those kind of situations. They do, as you say, have the skilled playmakers that I think can make them dangerous in this game against us. McLaurin can get open on anybody. In Samuel, you have that as your gadget guy, slot receiver, can do all of the bubble screen, tunnel screen, just get the ball in his hands and let him work up the field with Yak. And a pretty good route runner from within the slot too. He's not a star level guy, but he is really, really solid. And then even Logan Thomas, who I think last time we played them gave us some fits from the tight end position. He's not another guy to start, but he is a very productive tight end, and they do feature him quite a bit. And the worry I have on this is our defense. These kind of quarterbacks can remain patient. If BNB can get in his ear and just stay patient today. Stay patient today, Sam. Don't go outside the box. Stay in the box. He's got these guys that he can kind of pepper the ball around to on those shorter routes if we leave that open in the name of protecting against the deep ball and trying to stay away from chunk plays.
Yeah, I remember that game in 2020 where we played them, and eventually, God, who was their quarterback that year?
Heineke.
2020. No. That was a Dwayne Haskins game, I remember. Yeah, we were playing Dwayne Haskins in 2020.
Oh, that right. No, I'm thinking of the other one we played.
The next year.
Yeah, the next year.
2020, sorry. I remember Logan Thomas must have had like 12 catches. They just eventually realized, Bobby can't cover him. Let's just go to him every time. And every time it worked, and Bobby had no answer. I think Bobby's coverage numbers that year doubled in that game alone.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He's definitely given us some fits, and he's a big old target in the tight end. He moves really well, kind of like a receiver at the tight end position in certain ways and how he runs routes and catches. I'm worried about that part of it. They also have a rushing attack with a two-headed rushing attack that can give you some troubles as well in Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. They've got a nice 1-2 punch here, even those guys aren't prolific, but again, just good functional guys that can get the job done. They're going to be backs that are better than some of the backs I think that we faced this year at times. Robinson, hard running guy that just hard to bring down. Our team struggled to tackle last week. You're getting tested this week with this kind of back. And Gibson, another guy that can also give you like receiver-like abilities out of the backfield on some of those shorter routes to test that defense if it's going to be unwilling to press those shorter routes.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about this. This is kind of a litmus test for this run defense against a more immobile quarterback. Like Howell's not going to do the same things to you that Lamar Jackson was doing. He's not going to threaten you in the way that even PJ Walker did. So
No.
with that being the case, I want to see how this run defense plays because, obviously a lot of people making a big deal about the Nwosu effect. You lose Nwosu, your run defense goes down the tubes. Mm-hmm. So eventually it's got to find itself again because Nwosu's not walking through that door. So I'm very interested to see how this run defense plays in this game.
Especially because they do have a line that's also, if you especially go through the grades or just look at some of the talent they put there, it's not that it's, again, you say like a lot of the assets they have on the offensive side of the ball, it's not going to blow you away, but Charles Leno, their left tackle with the 73 grade, Andrew Wiley at the 69 grade, I think at the right tackle position. They've got even their center at 60. So like their line is been what I would say at least somewhat up to snuff to where decent backs, solid line, challenges on the outside that can that you make you honest as far as having to play against the routes where they can test, my worry in this game coming into how the Commanders can deal with us. If I'm BNB, if I'm in his shoes, I'm going, we come in this balanced. I want to test their ability to stop the run, which has been failing in recent weeks. I'm going to then work off of that with the short little attack throughout the first 3 quarters and just pepper the ball short constantly. And then come the third quarter, hopefully I can drive them up and then let Sam maybe take a shot at the top at that point and maybe pull the defense up a bit from a desperation standpoint. That's really the worry I have in this game, even above where our offense will be, because I think that the Commanders are going to try to stick in that pocket a little bit and be who they are. They know who they are offensively. They're not trying to be something they're not. And that means that you're going to get tested because they're going to go at what's kind of schematically the weakness of this defense, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that I think our interior defensive line, this is especially because it went so badly last week with your new addition of Leonard Williams. Mm-hmm. This is a big game for those guys, the interior of the defensive line, because it's just going to be tough on the edge for most of the rest of the year. You're still kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what your answer is at edge with no Nwosu. So I look at that and I go, we need our interior defensive line guys to really have a big game this week.
Well said. And when you look at guys like Jaron Reed and Draymond Jones last week and how they played and some of the other down level of play that you did have, Daryl Taylor and where he was at, those guys got to play better. And that Baltimore team was a tough team, but they're going to have to play better. To your point on this, for us to get more from this year. And they've in the case of Jaron Reed, with the hot start that he had, it's been kind of, and maybe it's the groin or whatever, but it has been a slowdown for him over there. And Draymond Jones was, I believe, your lowest rated defender by PFF coming out of this game. And
Yeah, he was bad. He got pushed around.
he did. And, maybe Leonard Williams' presence will help free him up to not have to be on the field as much to be pushed around in those rundown situations. But you do want to see more from some of these guys up front, or you're going to need to see more from some of these guys up front if we're going to find some more consistency and continued consistency defensively speaking. But this will be a challenge all the way around from this Washington offense. Not that they're challenging you as great as Baltimore, but we can't also look at them as just, our defense can kind of just sleepwalk their way through this one. I think they're going to have to take it to them a little bit. And to me, a key defensively where I stand is obviously stopping the run is a big point of it, but do you cut down on those short routes? You had this thing, Brendan, when you faced Baltimore and you had this faced you. You're going to let that, you didn't let it there. You squeezed down those routes. You brought the pressure based stuff. Will you take a kind of a page out of the book in that same way this week for me? Is a big major key on this defense, because if you leave it open, I think that they will dink and dunk you to death throughout this game.
Yeah. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, that's been the formula against this team for a long time. You got to start doing stuff to pull back on that. But it's also on the players to execute it when they do it. I made that video a couple weeks ago talking about how the Seahawks are actually blitzing at a normal amount now. They're starting to play a little more aggressively in their secondary. We're starting to see these things go in the right direction. So now the players need to actually execute it well, so the coaches feel empowered to continue to do that.
I was going to ask you about that. You said 24th. Was that right? Is our current ranking
on defense?
Blitz rate.
Oh, blitz rate. I think it's right in the middle. I think it's literally like 16th or 17th in blitz rate. But the caveat is it's all 5-man blitzes. We are 32nd bottom in 6-man plus blitzes.
He just doesn't want to blitz, man. He just doesn't. Carroll doesn't want to remove those guys out of the secondary.
Yeah. And let me be very clear about something there. Most teams don't blitz 6+ that often. Like most teams do it 5% of the time. A couple teams do it 10% of the time. Minnesota does it 30% of the time. They're like some uber outlier. It's rare, but you do see it a few times a game. You see it from us like once a month.
And it is 36. So it's that's the most extreme you can be on that end of the scale, and your lack of use of it, which I don't think you ever want to be at defensively in that spot of 32 in this realm, unless your defense is just so outstanding. And they haven't been up into this point. So you can't really lean on that and say, well, they've been so good, we don't have to do that. I don't know about that, Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for another $5 donation. Says, I've been throwing so much shade at Brendan today. I feel like I have to donate to his channel. Sorry, but I love you though. Appreciate it.
I haven't seen any shade. I haven't seen it. So whatever you're doing, you gotta.
I did a members only stream, so people get a little feisty in those member streams. It was all fun and whatever, but
yeah,
he'll give you some love back on the other end of it. I'm sure of it. Thank you though, Femi, for the double dono in the chat today, and I know you showed Brendan some love downwind on this one. I know you will. Appreciate you though, man. So is our offense going to be successful against this defense? They can do anything against this defense?
Our offense against their defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good about our offense against this defense.
Or reverse that. Their offense against our defense. Let me flip that.
Okay, Washington's offense is on a little bit of a hot streak here. They played really well 2 games in a row. New England, they didn't score as much as they should have, but they moved the ball phenomenally well. So I think there's going to be some success, but I mean, I don't think we're going to do what we did to the Giants. I don't think we're going to do what we did to the Cardinals even. I'm going to say, a moderate amount of success. At the end of the day, you should be able to generate a ton of negative plays on Sam Howell, because he's shown this year he is a guy who will turn the ball over a lot and take a ton of sacks. And I believe when you combine those two things together, there should be a good amount of success. But I'm also ready for them to find, get their own in. I don't think this is going to be some they're not going to be completely overmatched here.
That's a good point. I think it's a good point to put in it. Where it's so let's drive it down. Give me a final score on this game from you. Mentioned maybe 30 points. Give me where did we play out on the way this finally breaks out?
I'm going to go with something like 31-20.
Okay. I like it. I'm going to fall into 24-17. There's a draw to go to 30 points, but I just think the offense is down this year. And when you think things are going to be up, everything you got to like recalibrate down for whatever reason. It's just a weird year in that lane of things. And I think our offense will find enough consistency here. I think you're right there. We're not going to stop the Washington team all the way down on this one. Couple turnovers, get our offense on a short field at times, allow those to kind of convert through. And we pull through the day. It may not be enough to bring all the fans back over the side, but it'll be at least an encouraging enough win, I think, if you roll it out like that. But we should come away with this win, I think. I
think another element is the crowd against Sam Howell, a young, inexperienced quarterback. It's got to be a factor in this game.
It's a good point.
Needs to be a factor.
Yeah. No, I think that we're going to need your 12s if you're coming in that stadium this week. I say it every week, but I want to say it especially now. Like team needs you. They need you for that type of game you gave earlier this year where you really had that tangible effect on the game and caused all those false starts. Like that's what you can bring to the stadium when you bring the collective voice into play. And that's the part we got to make sure we're taking advantage of that when we walk in that stadium. But yeah, I'm glad this is at home and not in Washington, Brendan. I think I'd be even more nervous. I'm nervous anyway, but I'd be super nervous for this game just to be in Washington. I'm glad it's back over here, especially a 10 a.m. game. If it was another like back-to-back 10 a.m.s on the road, very, very, very happy to see that. But we're both expecting a Hawks win here this upcoming week. This isn't going to be an easy Washington matchup. Anything else that we didn't cover in this game that you might think that's worth notable or anything that stands out to you on
it? Fun little fact that I just realized earlier today. This Washington team employs Juan Castillo. Anybody remember him?
Juan Castillo. Name sounds familiar, but it's not ringing a bell.
He was the Eagles offensive line coach back in 2010. And then Andy Reid, when they had that, remember the Dream Team?
Mm-hmm.
With Vince Young and Nnamdi Asomugha. He just out of nowhere made him the defensive coordinator. He was an offensive line coach. He was, his whole life an offensive coach, and suddenly Andy Reid just goes, "Okay, you're my defensive coordinator now." It did not go well.
No. Belichick did that same move last year. That's so insane to me that they go to that place of thinking that this is going to work. Like, you're a professional coach, you know better than that. Some guy does this, he's a good off. Like, it's two different sides of the ball. Very strange decision to go with that. But
yeah.
What's he right now? He's the offensive coordinator? Or
no, he's their tight ends coach.
Well, that makes more sense. Tight ends coach, offensive line coach, coordinators, or coaches. Those are kind of ubiquitous. You could be either one. Those guys slide between the two very often on this. So we got us coming away with the win here this week, Brendan. I love this. I love this. Hopefully it's a turnaround game and a get right game, these two matchups. It's nice with this schedule to get this dip of two games to try to find your footing. And I think the most important thing on here, Brendan, is getting the wins, but also getting the identity in place for your team to get down the home stretch of those 4 games. It's not the home stretch, but it's the tough stretch. It's the gauntlet stretch of our schedule. Get those games locked down and locked in. Handle these 2 wins. Yes, get the wins, but get yourself a place where you're coming into the Niners game and you've got that identity in place. It may not work. It may work, but at least you have an identity locked in. You know what you are. Is it the 2 tight end sets? Is it a little bit more heavier blitzing on defense? What is the methodology? Show us what that methodology is these next couple of weeks, where it seems like, is it fair to say, Brendan, a little bit early on this year, we're still just sort of searching to find ourselves and who we are and what we are a bit.
Yeah, more than we thought we were going to, I think. I think a lot of people thought we've already got this offensive thing figured out, right? Because we had such a firm identity last year, and it's taking a little bit longer to figure it out than people thought, but that's where we are right now. But I have no doubt, at least offensively, the talent is there to be great. So, you've got 9 games to find it, right? Because I don't think anybody's getting fired until the end of the season, if that. So you've got time to fix it. You got time to find it.
Story's not said, and you're right. That's a great point about it. And wherever you may come, there's a lot of conclusions out there from Hawk fans I'm seeing out there about where they stand and think that the season's either. Some saying, well, we got it like we're us. There's optimism. Some thinking, no, we've proven we don't have a chance. This year's not it. wherever you may land, there is still, as Brendan's point on that is, all those games up ahead of us to potentially start to get this working in the right direction. And even if not for this season, or even just to get in the playoffs this season, to continue to build up towards getting yourself to that contending status. It can sometimes take a little bit of time. Sometimes it can be a little bit faster, but that's what we're trying to get done here. And we've got the parameters in place. Hopefully now we can just get it done here. So I want to thank you, Brendan, for coming on in the house here. You served some extra duty this week. I held you for 3 long hours. We'll go maybe a little shorter tonight. Yesterday, folks, if you didn't get a chance, we did a prospect breakdown of where these upcoming draftees are kind of sitting in our books and our measurements and all that. So you can check that out. We were on there doing that for a couple hours last night, but thank you for serving a double dip. I know you were working through some tooth pain out there, and appreciate you taping it up, putting on a little bit of, what's that stuff you put in the gums or you can't feel it, with lidocaine or something? Oh, you're muted.
I use Anbesol. That's what it's called.
That's right. Anbesol. That's the good stuff, man. The only problem is you got to put it on every about 2 minutes. So it wears out. It's like Bubblicious. It has the same flavor timetable as Bubblicious. Like, okay, that one's good. Next piece. But thank you, man, for being a trooper on this, hanging on in here. And we will be back to do a, of course, post-game breakdown on Tuesday, back here on my side of things, I believe.
Yes.
But do please, guys, get over to Seahawks Brendan Nelson. Make sure you do sub up to him. If you guys could do me this favor, hit that like button here on this show. It does help this channel out, helps me show up on the algorithm and all that good stuff out there. I do appreciate all of you guys watching. Let me make sure I didn't get any donos missed. That's always my big fear. I think we caught up on everything.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. We all good. Thank you guys for all the donos in the chat today as well, and all that support. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see how this week goes upcoming, man. And it's going to be, nobody's really sure what to expect, Brendan. We think there will be a bounce back. We think that fighting spirit's going to be drawn to play. We don't know what's going to happen, but you know what is going to happen? They're going to have the full support of this fan base. They're going to know that we got their back, and hopefully they reward us for showing it. So let's let them know right now. Let's let our Hawk fans know that you need to keep this thought at the forefront of your mind. Have this team's back for now. We'll come to ultimate conclusions on this team at the end of the season. We'll come to ultimate conclusions on Gino and everything else down the line, and Carroll and everything else in between at that end, once we got the full season to kind of operate off of, as all the information at play at that point. But for now, we got their backs. We're supportive, and we hope that we are going to start to turn this again back in the right direction this week against this Washington team and get ourselves, hopefully, slowly but surely, to maybe back to that contender status. I appreciate you guys watching, but I hope you don't ever forget. Don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.